We drilled to the bottom of the ocean, and we don't know what came out.
With Underwater, we got to create this incredible visual world, you know, going to the bottom of the ocean. And we really wanted people to feel like they wanted, you know, even though it's a scary movie and there's a lot of places you might want to close your eyes, I wanted people to want to watch just because it's such an interesting place. So getting to envision that was a lot of fun. And our cinematographer, Bojan Bazelli, is a true master of his craft who just literally, you know, we shot 65 millimeters, so really big. So I hope people go see this in the movie or in the theaters because it's just so cool looking.
You start out with a group of people that have like decided to be completely alone. And so their relationship with society, with the world at large in any way is really extreme, in an extreme sense, cut off. And the idea that their bosses, you know, the company that runs all of this, you know, that they're even just their being there, have put them in harm's way in the sense that they've accessed sort of inaccessible places, that they've taken things that don't belong to them, that we've mined the bottom of the ocean, that we're digging for oil in a place of such mystery that what comes out is not necessarily just an emergency sort of natural disaster, but actually it's a repercussion. You know, at its core, that's also what the movie's about.
The film is about a group of deep-sea researchers and miners and developers, people that are at a kind of substation at the bottom of the ocean doing drills and picking up data and doing all this research, and just out of the blue one day they're totally knocked back by a giant earthquake that kind of just decimates the substation where they're staying and living, and it's collapsing and flooding, and they have no time to try and figure out a way to get out of it and to get back up to the surface.
It takes a very interesting type of person to volunteer to go to the bottom of the ocean for a placement of minimum 6 months. You're trapped. You're trapped. It's from afar, I would say it's a job for people who hate people, but there's actually something kind of unifying about it. You may go there to escape, but you're surrounded by people and you can't get away from them. We have to help each other, otherwise we won't survive.
When I first got the script for Underwater, I just read straight through it. It was just so interesting seeing this vision and imagining what could possibly be down at the bottom of the ocean, and imagining a world where people are down there, you know, just blue-collar workers doing mineral extraction and stuff like that. So looking at that futuristic world was completely enticing to me. But just the fact that we know so little and that we know more about space than we practically do know about what's in our own backyard, I knew I had to get into that and make a story.
All of it was like a test. And I feel like there's no reason to do a movie unless it scares you. There's no reason to do anything unless there's something propelling you forward. There's a curiosity that's... I'm not curious about stuff I know about. I'm curious about stuff I don't know about. And so this was appropriately, unknowably uncomfortable.
It's been a very intense film to make, and I think that will 100% translate onto the screen. I think it's going to feel really claustrophobic and cloying, and there are elements of sensory deprivation to it, because sometimes our lights go out, and you know, sometimes the space is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and we can't see anymore, and there's a great fear of the unknown, what's outside of the pod, what's outside of the station.
There's some stuff that takes place in a flooded kind of tunnel in this canal, and it's flooding and it's about up to our chests, and we reach a point where it's blocked and we can't go any further, and it's very claustrophobic. And those were my favorite days on the set, because we were actually in this flooded set. It was dark, and we couldn't, unlike other sets, the director and not everybody could get in the water with us. They had to kind of shoot from the sidelines and stuff. So it really, and in between takes, if they turned off the lights or anything, you suddenly were just in this kind of flooded tunnel. And those days made it so easy to to do it because all you had to do was react to what's happening around you. And like that's what every reactor I think really wants, is just an environment that feels real.
We used a lot of crazy technologies to get there. But in a way, what was so cool was with our Dry for Wet, we were able to shoot in the dark and use volumetric sort of scanning, if you will, to achieve this look, which is a process of putting a tiny bit of atmosphere around the actors and letting their flashlights, move through these tiny, tiny bits of particles that we're actually putting in the room. And then later we measure that and we know about the density to which the water should be moving around them through their movements and the way their flashlights are moving through the scene. And what's so exciting about that is it enables the actors to actually be in the space, in the dark, only seeing what their flashlights see and really feeling like they're there, which is any, storyteller will tell you that's one of the most important things, because you're not asking the actor to get on a big green screen and just sort of pretend they're in the dark. They really get to be in the dark, surrounded by that claustrophobia, and really only see what's in their flashlight. Then we take that scene, measure these sort of like 3D elements that we have by having these little markers around, and then we simulate the water around that. And the results are pretty wild. So
when she gets like slammed onto the godlight and you encounter an actual monster for the first time, there are things existing in nature that look monstrous. Like there are things that aren't surprising, but are genuinely terrifying and horrific. I think that there's such a sort of like striking, surprising thing about having something look like the things of our nightmares come out of the ocean, that it's the first taste of like really what we've tapped into. Like really like our punishment is really shoved in our faces in that moment in a really severe way.
The pressure down there combined with the temperature means that only very, very strange things live down there. And most of it's just a wasteland. So I can imagine if my station blew up at the bottom of the ocean and I was in a suit and I had to walk to the other one and I couldn't see it. You can't see anything. That's such a mental challenge as well as a physical challenge, to just walk off into the nothingness.
The choice that William made to put the camera inside the helmet, and how masterfully it was done because of how hard that is to do on such a sort of high energy thing. If you're moving around that much and there's like so many variables that are uncontrollable, that's really not easy to do. And it does add this, really like the film's nerves are very close to the surface, because you're not outside of that experience, you're very much inside of it. And I know that that's like a goal that a lot of filmmakers have with movies like this, but this one feels very much under the skin. I have to say, I think they really did kill that perspective. It feels too close. It feels like, please give us some breathing room, but there just isn't any room for that.
Unlike doing a lot of green screen work, we did a lot of this kind of like black screen work where it's just the set is just kind of plunged into kind of darkness with specific lighting, schemes kind of drawn up. But for the most part, you're just out there on kind of a dark stage. And I actually kind of enjoyed those days because you don't really know what you're looking at and what's happening. And instead of like staring down a big bright green screen, you're actually just looking out into darkness, which is kind of much more evocative of what I think the film's going to look like. And that's what it would be like if you were down actually, that many fathoms below the sea.
You're immediately thrown into the mess of people running, and there are water pipes blowing out, and whole sections of the station are collapsing from the pressure. And it doesn't let up. It goes like that. It goes like that all the way through.
We are not prepared for it. My character is brushing her teeth and barefoot. We're not going into battle. We're not on a mission. We are truly caught unawares in a sort of tragedy situation. And to see the way that people show their true colors and who they really turn out to be in trauma is interesting.
Anytime I catch a frame in the movie, like anytime I see a playback on a monitor, like it's wild. Like it really is like a ride, like a wild ride, but one that's like, it has really sharp corners, so there is like a ton of danger, and like kind of every frame just visually is really striking and really alive. I think it's just kind of like, I think that it, from the minute it starts, it's just kind of like, you know, buckle yourself in and take off.
You're pulling me underwater!